today we have with us on the Mantality Miss Priyanka Madan, who is a human behavioral specialist and a certified life coach. So she has about over 16 years of experience in working in the corporate sector, and now uses her skills and knowledge to assist individuals to achieve their respective goals. Over to you now, Priyanka. If you could just encapsulate a bit of your journey and the transition from the corporate sector to now as a professional life coach, please.
Thank you so much, Yash, for that welcome. Well, I think as long as I remember, I've always been very curious about human behavior and human mind. And that led me to join the learning and development department very early on in my career when I was started with the corporates. And I was on that journey for about 12 to 13 years. And, that kind of sets you in a long-term learning sort of a journey. You're constantly learning and developing yourself because you are imparting knowledge to others.
Sure.
And I think about 10 years ago, I came across this word as coach. And I was like, while L&D means I'm giving training and the hangover of what I do remains about a day or two. And then what after that? The moment people leave
Right.
the
Right.
training room, there is no accountability of any self-development.
Right.
So
Right.
when I understood a bit about coaching at that time, 10 years ago, and I was like, okay, I think this is a stepping stone. This is what I want to become in the next, as a next level for myself,
Right.
because it felt like it's more one-on-one, more intimate, and it has a huge sense of accountability, because you're
Right.
working with someone to get somewhere.
Right.
And I thought this is how I'd like to contribute in helping others and also helping myself while I learn through this journey. So I think that's when the seed set in that I want to become a coach. And I moved to Dubai about 6 years ago, and I started here with different jobs. And then I decided, I think in 2019, I took a step that I want to formalize this. I was doing coaching, otherwise also helping a lot of
Right.
people, friends and acquaintances. But I
Right.
formalized this about 2.5 years back when I took my certification. And since then, I have been helping a lot of clients, using my skills.
Great, great. So was it like a conscious decision to move away from the corporate sector? I know you're still working, but like now you're professionally like was it like something clicked, or you how did you like
Yeah.
like you decide to become like a life coach and all of that?
So it's very interesting. So currently I work with a college here in Dubai, which is a government college into vocational education.
Right.
And I kind of teach, more subjects which are to do with personality and developing the students and setting them up
Right.
for the industry.
Right.
Um, so I also do a lot of counseling at the college. So
Right.
work with the youngsters.
Right.
And I think what triggered this certification was that I was helping a lot of people around me. People who knew me would come and ask for help, advice, and they would come up, consciously call me and ask me, we're stuck here. What do we do? How can you? I thought I'll speak to you about this. And it was just coming again and again. And I was getting, if I can call them compliments or some sort of
Sure.
literal
Right. Right.
advice from people,
Right.
that um, Priyanka, why don't you take this up? You're very good at this. You should do this. You should do this. And I was like, am
Like
I really ignoring the
take
sign?
it
Again and
seriously.
again, I discussed with my husband, and he's like, yeah, you should do this. You do very well. You make a lot of sense in what you do.
Right.
So why don't you really learn the framework of what it is all
Right.
about and,
Right.
and structure it for yourself?
Right.
And that's when I took the plunge. So I think somewhere there was a sign that I should take it up now. That kind of triggered it for me.
Great. So there's not too much knowledge in the public domain. There is actually, but in fact, it's not right in the faces of people who, unless and until you are going through something, stress, anxiety, or whatever. If one is not hasn't gone through it personally, or won't have the knowledge of it. If you could just give us a slight bit of a differentiation between who actually is a life coach and a therapist, because a therapist is generally looked at from a perspective of somebody who's going through anxiety, depression, stress and all of that. He makes up an appointment, he goes to, but not we don't actually hear of people actually making an appointment and going to a life coach and taking advice for their personal life or their professional. So what's the main difference between a life coach and a therapist?
Thank you so much for asking that, because that's the biggest trouble of this job.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I think like there are so many overlapping modalities, like, there's teacher, there's a trainer, and there's a counselor, there's a therapist, there's a psychiatrist, there's a life coach, and of course, so many kinds of coaches available now, the health coach, and I don't know, love coach and relationship coach.
Sure,
So
right,
it becomes more confusing for people to understand what does it really mean when I say I'm a life coach.
right,
And this is one of the first things you set out to understand when you take up this profession. So,
right.
therapist is essentially someone who works on your past. Okay.
Okay.
Therapist, you would go to a therapist when you are in some sort of pain with some incident, or you're suffering from some trauma. That's when you should go to a
It might
therapist, because
both
a
be
therapist is
personal
qualified.
or professional, both.
Yeah, yeah. Because the person is qualified to do treatment through therapy.
Right,
Therapy being multiple kinds of therapy. There's
right,
cognitive therapy, there's humanistic therapy. So there
right,
are different therapies that are available, using which the therapist is able to treat you and get you out of the trauma, heal you,
right,
help you with your past. There
right,
is nothing about future in therapy.
right,
Okay. That's essentially the main difference. And life coaching is all about the future. We focused on here and now and the future in life coaching. We are
right,
not talking about the past. In fact, we don't pick up things which we feel will trigger the past, or we don't want to go back to the past, because it's very future focused. It
right,
comes in line, it comes into picture in your life when you are, you could be stuck in decision making, or you don't know where to head in your career, but you're
right,
not stuck with something which has to do with your past. You're stuck
right,
in the present and you don't know how to move forward from here,
right,
or you're really moving forward and you want to accelerate your growth. you
right,
know so
right,
we help you, I would say, a little bit more than survival and then thrive. Definitely. That's
right,
what life coaching is about. So you don't have to be sick or not functioning to be going
right,
to a life coach. Essentially, you could be absolutely doing wonderful in your career and you feel like, you know what, I need to have a sounding board. I need to share this intimate dialogue that I'm having with myself, with somebody else, and help someone to ask those questions to me, which I'm probably not discovering for myself, so that I can be directed. And life coach is not giving you any solutions. We're just helping you, working with you to guide you to that point where you want to reach.
right,
So
right,
that's essentially the difference. And therapists would be, working with you if you have depression, anxiety, if you're diagnosed with something like that.
right,
And the therapist is not really supposed to give you any medication, is only using therapy. And if you are further step up, then you have to go to a psychiatrist where the
right.
prescriptions can be prescribed. Yeah.
Right. With the influx of so much workload in the corporate culture, a lot earlier, what used to happen was, uh, companies used to focus on the IQ. Now, what's happened is a lot of companies have started focusing more on the EQ, the emotional quotient, and the well-being of their employees and all of that. And hence, they've started hiring motivational speakers and life coaches and all of that. Is it the same kind of push that a motivational speaker has on somebody who's working in the corporate vis-a-vis a life coach?
Well, a lot of life coaches are also doing
Yeah, because
motivation.
they are
They're
professionally
trying to.
hired by corporates as well.
Yeah. So I think who is if you look at someone who's able to motivate you, you've had to have your own journey or
Right.
experience, which has, given you some sense of understanding, and you can share your story with others. That's where the motivation comes from.
Sure.
Essentially comes from stories, right? We like to hear stories and connect with those stories, and that's how we feel motivated as individuals. So
Right.
either you have a story, and otherwise, I think a life coach can bring in very different perspectives.
Right.
And when you bring in perspectives to people, and when you take them on the journey of reflection and introspection,
Right.
you are essentially opening doors for them.
Right.
And when you open, you leave them with little bit of that door open, and then the rest is to follow. And that is a sense of sometimes, while you listen to a life coach, you could come up
Right.
with, oh, I
Right.
never
Right.
thought of it from this perspective.
Right.
So
Right.
I that's the beautiful journey that the life coach brings in. and
Right.
and if you want to, of course, get inspired from that and get
Right.
motivation, that's where I think the corporates are really essentially using
Right.
the coaching as a formula. Yeah.
Right. 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 Great. So, Priyanka, you've obviously worked for almost 15, 16 years in the corporate sector, and then you've also done a master's in psychology and all of that. So I just want to pick your brains on the most common health conditions or mental health conditions that you probably see in the corporate culture. What's the most common?
Well, I think it's all out there. In fact, not just corporates. I work with young minds, and I see so much
Right,
happening there with today's generation. Um, Depression, anxiety. I feel like a lot of low self-esteem
right,
and general coping. This just seems to be a lack of coping mechanism
right,
with day-to-day life and events,
right,
especially being a very, very dynamic world that we're living in. And there's so much happening with the influx of technology and AI and so many things coming your way that it's a
right,
very threatening sort of a world, and you feel like you know so much and yet you don't know so much. So I think there's a lot happening, and I think people working in the corporates are also feeling the burden of, okay, work from home is there, but there's also too much micromanagement coming with that. While
right,
you think work from home works for you, you forget that the whole social aspect of that brings you to work, and the whole life that you had beyond sitting at your desk and interacting with different humans,
right, right,
that's gone. And if you take that away, you suddenly feel, oh, I have so much stress. Oh,
right,
where is that laughter at the coffee session in the office, and that little bit of chit chat that you had? It used to take away a lot of burden. The social aspect was a big part of it. So while we are all trying to think that um, work from home is great, but I think there's a lot of different impact that is having on people's
right,
lives. So definitely that. And I think the pressure of work from home doesn't bring in work life balance to a lot of people. They don't realize that. And
right,
when it doesn't bring in that, what is happening is your lifestyle is getting impacted, your sleep is not there, and you don't realize when all those physical aspects are getting affected, you
right,
are somewhere getting hormonally affected as well.
right,
So the hormone levels are going up and down, and you're
right,
feeling grumpy, and you have mood swings, and you have stress, and you don't understand what's going on. So
right.
I think that's essentially, these are the things that I see are happening today.
I think post COVID, now we've seen that a lot of corporates, because they have realized that they can save on a lot of monies with regards to if there's a co-working space, or like energy saving lights and all of that. So much money they can save as an organization, and hence they've started promoting the whole work from home culture and all of that. So is it a conscious decision? Do you think it's correct, or like you should just leave it to the individual in the organization to decide as to if it's better for him, more product as far as more productivity is concerned, it's good for him that he goes physically to office and start working? Do you think that makes sense?
If you go back to the history and if you read and understand how human life is designed, we are
Right.
designed to be with each other. We're a
Correct,
social
correct.
animal,
Right,
right?
right,
We're not supposed to be confined to our spaces and not interact with the world. So when you shut yourself down in a room for 8 hours and 10 hours of the day and talking to this machine in front of you,
right, right,
this virtual connect is really not helping us. And we may think, oh, I have had 10 calls today, I've talked to 10 people, but there's a huge difference in talking to people virtually and in person. However, there should be a balance. I think
right,
companies should probably make it a balance in terms of once a week or twice a week, or some
correct,
sort of mandate should be brought in, and
correct,
not just go all out and say, okay, fine, we can't
right,
be on one side.
right,
Life is all
right,
about creating that balance. We've
right,
understood that is beautiful. It's lovely. It's bringing in, countries like UK and even UAE, for that matter, going for 4.5 day weeks and
right,
4 day weeks and going for longer weekends. It's great. Do the experiment and find out what's really happening. In fact, I think last week the result of UK 4 week has come out, and they're coming up with a lot of analysis on what has worked and
correct,
how it can be implemented or not. So I
right,
think it's important to do certain experiments and not just jump in and say that, what, COVID happened and this worked and let's just go with it now. I don't
right.
think people have really done experiment with it and really
Sure.
understood what is coming out of this whole thing.
Right, right,
So yeah, there has to be some sort of analysis, and then I think bring in a balance. That will be a better idea.
right. That makes actually a lot of sense, because I've I have friends and like ex-colleagues, and I often uh, you know uh, have a word with them on and off, and they say that of all profiles, so to speak, as where a profile like a sales profile, where you the KRA itself is to be out there physically and meet people physically. All that has started happening through the confines of their homes, or
Yeah.
Zoom calls and all of that. And the companies are promoting all of that. And uh,
Yeah.
many a times it's started affecting the mental health also. And then of course there's a certain stigma also, which is very very prevalent in especially in an Indian society, where you people are looked down upon if you talk about mental health or depression. And they just uh, uh, because we have this innate habit of minusculing it to a very frivolous discussion, or we use the word I'm being depressed very casually. And people don't understand that it is a serious issue, and there is a stigma attached to it with mental health. So how do you think that people should seek help for it, or reach out to people, because that's very important?
Mm. I think there are a couple of things that will help. First, to begin with, is what you said and you pointed out. I think it's very essential that how casually we use the terms, oh, I'm depressed. Oh,
Right,
I'm feeling like this, oh, I'm anxious. Okay, we all have anxiety of certain level. That's human
right,
nature to be anxious. But to
right.
say that I have an anxiety disorder, and of course, Google is not helping. We try to self-diagnose and we try to think
Oh,
I know it all and I don't need to go to a doctor and I can find out myself what's happening with me. By reading a couple of symptoms online, you can't really tell yourself what's going on,
correct,
first of all.
correct.
And I remember, when I was doing my internship, when I was doing my master's with a hospital, um, before that, of course, I'd heard the term OCD so many times and
Right,
how we would call people OCD.
right, right,
And I remember for one day, I was sitting and I would just be observing the patients while the doctor was examining them.
right,
And the patient came and was very in very bad condition. She had kind of scars all over her body and everything
right,
physically. And it was diagnosed later on that she's an OCD patient
right,
and she's got an obsessive behavior. That's essentially what it means. You have obsessive behavior because of which you develop a habit. In
right,
your mind kind of develops a habit to displace that obsessive behavior.
right,
You're running away from that. What she would do is whenever the thought would come, she would feel like going and cleaning herself to the
right,
extent that she had rubbed and you know scarred her skin. It was
right,
to that level. And
right,
that's an OCD. That's
right,
what when we're saying and diagnosing OCD, imagine. And I
right.
was like, oh God, until date, we've just been using that term just at a drop of
Casually,
a hat. Oh
right,
my God,
right,
oh, you're a little bit of a cleanliness freak, you're an OCD. You like a bit of organizing things and you're an
right,
OCD. So casually we do use these terms, depression, anxiety, all of this,
right,
I
right,
think it takes away the real meaning.
right, correct, correct.
It never, of course, since I've learned all this, I'd never use these terms
Right,
casually.
right,
Even in Hindi, we say so many words like pagal and all of that.
right,
I
right.
really refrain from it. I know while
And
we're saying
it
and
comes to you.
casually,
It comes to you very organically. You don't even unconscious, and you start using it unconsciously.
because that's how you're conditioned. You've been
Right,
listening to it
right,
all through your life. And now it's just a matter of fact. It doesn't even, you don't even give some heed to it. What's really,
right,
you don't pay any attention to that.
right,
So that's one thing, be conscious of the language. That's
right,
extremely important.
right,
And I think awareness brings in that. When
right,
you start getting aware,
right,
what are these terms and what is the level of importance attached and what are the intricacies involved, then you realize the seriousness involved. Then you realize, oh my God, I can't be so casual about these terms.
right, right,
And I have changed, my language changed, 10 years ago when I finished my education. I felt like, no, I can't. And I just haven't. Since then, it is not even a conscious effort. I just know these terms are not meant to be used like that,
right,
so can't use them anymore. So
right.
self-awareness is extremely important.
Very important.
You must constantly educate yourself of what's really there. What are these terms? Are you feeling anything? And there's no harm in seeking help.
Sure.
you
Right,
know
right,
um before you think of what's the world's going to say and what is the stigma involved, you got to take care of yourself. Charity begins at home. If you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to be able to handle any of this around you. So it's
right,
extremely important that we take the step when we need to. And I think as people around someone who has or who is experiencing anything, any difficulties, I
right,
think a bit of compassion and empathy would really help.
right.
We are very hard. We are very harsh these days, and
Right.
we are judgmental, and we are looking at, there's a lack of compassion that I see. We kind
Right.
of have lost that a bit, and I feel people need to be a little bit more compassionate.
Just to take forward with what you just said right now, Priyanka, there is a stark difference between a thought process and the functioning of a man vis-a-vis a woman. So women generally have this habit of communicating more, talking more, and all of that, without sounding, misogynistic or sexist and all of that.
Yeah.
uh, but this is a very important difference. Men don't communicate, right? And most often than not, they if they have any kind of an issue with regards to stress or anxiety or problems, they don't share it, and they keep it within themselves, which is again, it starts manifesting into something which becomes very, very serious, leads to depression, and we see a lot of cases of suicides also happening and all of that. So what's the way forward for a man to deal with situations like these?
I think again, a lot of it comes from conditioning. As you grow up, you see your father not expressing. General expression is kind of taken away from men, and we are somehow said, "Oh, you don't express that much, and you should be crying, and you should be feeling sad, or you're." It's just the burden of running the house and having the burden to bring in bread and butter in the family, and that kind of
Right.
comes in more than other things in life, on
Right.
a man. And when that happens, you don't realize when you've become the person who doesn't express and doesn't talk. Even if you're meeting your friends, male friends, you probably do a lot of fun and chit chatting. I don't know, you must have some friends as well sometimes, but
Sure.
I
Sure.
don't know how many people really share deep down fears and secrets and what's really going on in their mind.
Right.
So I think it's also, I do think it takes a lot of courage for a man or a woman to come and say that, you know what, I think I've got some problem
Problem.
because
Right.
of the way the world looks at it.
Right.
And when I say world, it means all of us, you, me,
Right.
everybody. That's why I
Right.
said
Right.
compassion is very important and empathy is very important.
Right. Right.
Uh, you know, I was watching a movie the other day and it said, violence is very good as long as it doesn't happen to you.
Right.
You
True.
know,
Yeah.
it's fun to watch a action-packed movie, but
Right.
if you're
Right.
in it, then you
Yeah.
would hate yourself.
Uh,
You don't want to be in that situation, right? So it's very nice to give advice on depression, anxiety. Everybody can give some advice these days, but if
right.
what if it was happening to you?
Right.
So a little bit of empathy and compassion can go a long way,
Right.
in
Right.
being there for each other and
Right.
just helping people out. One is that I think
Right.
um, I would say that if you want to go, if you feel like you feel you can't talk to someone around you and you feel like you'll be judged, that's where someone like a life coach or a therapist comes into picture, because they don't know you, and the essential training that they've got is to not be judgmental to people who they meet, right?
Right.
Because there is
Right.
no background to who you are. And
Right.
that's when they can bring in that you can completely be, you're sitting in front of them, but you're literally anonymous because they don't know anything about your life. They're going to know only about what you're going to talk about.
Right.
And
Right.
this is their job. So they're not going to do anything with that information except to guide you and help you and get away with it. That's it.
Right.
So I think seeking a professional help is really, really important.
Right.
And again, we must not think like, oh, I'm sick, or is this going to put a tag on me that I have become this? Don't burden yourself with all that.
Right. Right.
We all go through challenges in life and we can overcome them as long as we are ready to help ourselves.
Great, great, great. Good insights. So professionally, you're a life coach and all of that. You must be meeting a lot of clients, prospective clients, and all of that. So, what's a typical session like, basically, with a client? If you can just give me a slight bit of an insight on that.
um Well, the problems are, they can be something very small to something extremely big. It's again a matter of perspective. And as I said, the coach and the therapist have to be non-judgmental, and we're not supposed to judge people on the level of the problem because
Hmm.
it's just a challenge for someone, to get through that. So
Hmm.
I think essentially the common things that I hear are decision making in order to decide about something in life, whether it's a career point or maybe something in personal life,
Right.
or maybe finding themselves stuck in some sort of a life situation, where they don't know how to head forward from here. I don't know what to do from here. It's like the conflict between a mind and a heart, and I don't know.
Right.
A lot of those situations come in. A lot of times it's an issue about building habits. I want to do this,
Right.
but what's coming in the way is my own self, and I don't know that.
Do
And
clients do? Sorry to interrupt you. Do clients sign an NDA with you?
it's more than them, it's me, right? I'm not
Right.
supposed to share
Yeah, that's what
the
I'm saying. It's
details of my
mutual, but I'm saying,
clients.
does that happen? Like,
No, the client would typically not sign an NDA because he or she is mostly trusting the person in front, the life coach,
right,
that I am not supposed to share that. And that's one of the confidentiality is one of the big aspects of the service.
right,
And we say that before we start every session. We are supposed to create a safe space
right,
and make the client feel and make him understand that I'm keeping everything confidential. And
right,
that remains that way, needless to say that.
right,
So, yeah, um, people want to get more accountability built in their life, build
right,
new habits, get rid of habits which are
right,
coming in the way, or
right,
sometimes it's relationships.
right.
Yeah, so different kind of issues.
Right, right. A lot of therapists and also use. I'm sure if you could throw light on this, I might be wrong, but this is what I've heard also and read a few places. A lot of therapists and also do this process of hypnosis. Is what I've. So is this real and does it work with the clients? Does it work? The process of hypnosis?
Um, Again, I've just heard about it. I've not delved into hypnosis myself, so I can't comment on it. But
Right.
yes, I do know that a couple of people who I know do hypnosis, and it seems to work for them,
Okay.
and they believe in that sort of modality, so they
Right.
practice that. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So, and how do you, when you're approaching and meeting people, how do you tailor your coaching approach to meet unique needs of each client? What is it? Is it a set template that you follow, or obviously there's no one size fits all. Obviously, every individual has their own unique problems and it's completely subjective to the scenario of the individual and what he's going through and all that. But from your perspective, are you following a certain template, or you adjust your to your ways of dealing with individual clients? How do you do that?
So, some basics kind of go with all sessions, of course, to be non-judgmental, keeping the biases away and going with a clean mind.
Right.
Um, Being in a certain mind space to be able to take a coaching session is extremely important. You can't have internal chatter going on while you're taking a session.
Sure.
That's a very important aspect of it.
Time.
So, yeah, being in the headspace where you're ready to take the session. And um, when you're listening to the person, we are told that we must listen to the client as if we're listening to God.
Right.
That's the level of attention and focus that is required, because client is giving you all the answers. you
Right.
know
Right.
Human beings are so complex. When they're telling you the problem, the answer is also coming out,
Right.
but
Right.
we don't really pay attention to that.
Right.
So as a coach, you're supposed to be so with the client focused and listen to him at that level, where
Right.
you're able to take out the listening at not just the first and the second and third and the fourth level, as to understand what's really going on and what is it that this client is saying. And once you do that, you can tailor your questions and you can guide, and the
Right.
question comes to you, because we always believe in coaching that the client has all the resources and all the answers within.
Right. Right.
I'm just supposed to guide the person and lead him to the point where he wants to be led, where he wants to be led. I'm not leading him to where
Right.
I want to lead
Right.
him.
Right.
So I can figure out everything. I think the tailor making happens while in the process of the questions, when you're listening to the person completely, and then your questions just keep coming your way, and then you move in that direction.
Right. Right. Great. And I'm sure you must be having a lot of clients who've come out winners, and they've come to you with problems, professional, personal, whatever. And if you could just give us a slight bit of an insight as to any person, any client that who's probably had a breakthrough or a transformational experience through coaching. Anyone?
Well, like we just discussed, confidentiality is a big thing, so I'm not going to discuss the
No, I
details of
don't
the
want to. I
session.
don't want to. But
Yeah,
no, an example. I obviously don't. I don't want to delve
yeah,
into the specifics.
details. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Um, yes, breakthroughs happen, and essentially, if they're not happening, then you're worried as a coach what's going on,
Right.
because you want the breakthrough to happen. This is why you're there for them,
Right. Right.
While I say that, it's also not always that the breakthrough might happen, you
Right.
know. sometimes we leave you with enough to think about, and it takes a couple of sessions for the breakthrough to come through,
Right.
because it takes that much work at both sides,
Right.
especially at the client side, to ponder over the questions and
Sure.
go through the details and then come back. Sometimes they come back after a session and 3 days later they're like, you know what, you asked me that question at that day and I felt like I was thinking about it later and this is what I felt, and they connect the dots and everything. And sometimes it doesn't happen in the session. It happens much later. The effect of coaching is happening much later and
Right.
simmers and kind of comes back and say, oh, you know,
Right.
I had a feeling like that and I got this. And when that, it's so beautiful when you see that expression on the client's face and you know that, in this moment something has happened. And sometimes they don't realize it themselves. And you
Right.
would ask them, I see a shift in your perspective. I see something happening to you. What's going on? And then they start thinking, oh, is something happening to me? Am I really thinking something different than what I was thinking 5 minutes before?
Right.
And
Right.
you know so those are, of course, those are the times that you work for. And then why I'm in this profession comes into picture. This is what I'm in for, and
Right.
it's just a beautiful feeling. I can't describe it, when that happens.
Right. I'm sure because yeah, what I think, in my opinion, Priyanka, to be very honest, like we just discussed, that it takes a lot of courage to uh, share your thoughts with regards to your personal or your professional life, and share it with someone professionally for help. It
Yeah.
takes a lot of courage and all of that, and people should treat it from a perspective of empathy, and especially with regards to social media, there's a lot of uh, disinformation, misinformation that is being meted out to very very young individuals. And people who are talking about somebody, who's talking about somebody who's like an Andrew Tate, and who's an extremely polarizing figure, and he talks about gender biases, and he might sound but he I don't I might have uh, certain opinions, but I think a young boy or a girl who has access to internet, and he sees such content on social media, and it affects them, and they, a 13-year-old having their own opinion and strong opinions. So do you think social media has a lot of say, and to how exactly a young mind functions, and eventually deals with things?
Yeah, I'm all for that. I think social media plays a very big role in how our minds are getting shaped today. Essentially because it's the information is being pushed to us rather than we taking on and
Right.
and finding out what we want to seek. Mindlessly spending time on social media like Instagram and LinkedIn and other places where you
Right.
are just coming across information and then reacting to that. You're not really sure what you're looking for. So especially on all these apps, you're not really looking out for something. On a Google or something, you type something, you want to read something, you want to get some information. That's like more of seeking. Here, it's getting pushed to you, and algorithm is designed in a way that the moment you start looking at certain aspects of some things, and those things get pushed to
Right.
you, so it becomes like endless pattern of things. Before you realize it's already happened, and you're
Sure.
already into it,
Right.
and then you're enjoying it, and you don't realize how many hours in a day you spend on that.
Right.
And it can be very very toxic, and don't I don't think people realize the amount of impact it creates on them, because you may just think that consciously I'm just looking at these things, oh, I'm not attached to this, I just look at it for fun.
Right.
We say things to kind of justify what we are doing,
Right.
but every information that we are seeking through all the five senses all the time is creating something inside us. Unconsciously, it's going inside, it's getting registered. And that is what comes out in terms of what you pick up, which nuance you picked up, and how that becomes a part of your system very
Right.
soon.
Right.
So I think it's extremely important to, again, bring in some sort of discipline into what we are seeing in terms of information and what we are consuming as content.
Right.
Because if you look back in the years, people were reading books and they were just like watching couple of shows that would come on the TV, and
Right.
they had their favorites, and there was a time limit because it'd be like a one episode 1 week. You're limited to that, you would enjoy that to thrill, and then you would wait.
Right.
Here it's series comes and we're binge watching and we're waiting. I mean, I understand times need to change and we need to evolve. And if technology is available, we need to use it. But what about all the discipline?
Right.
That goes out of the system. And if we're
True.
going to abuse things this way, then we are constantly abusing ourselves and our mind. And we're not giving any space for physical activities, socializing, really meeting people, doing things that we would love to do. So many people don't have hobbies. It shocks me.
Right.
When I ask youngsters, what are your hobbies?
I'm guilty of that.
Netflixing is a hobby. It's not an hobby.
Right.
Watching TV is a hobby. Go
Right.
beyond that. Do something else. Hobby is essentially to put your mind into something,
Right.
to gain something out of that. So what's happening?
True. True. True.
Yeah.
So, just before we wrap up, last question, Priyanka. What advice would you give someone who's considering working with a life coach or seeking help in his professional life or his personal life? What advice would you give them?
Um, I think I would just say that, life coaching, I mean, any sort of coaching, well, first of all, it's a process, and both coach and coachee are partners in this process and they
Right.
work together to find something done. So
Right.
I'm not here as a provider or I'm not here as a doctor or a something therapist. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing something for you. You
Right.
and me are working together to get something done.
Right.
So
Right.
the accountability has to be on both sides, but more on your side because you obviously want your goal to
Right.
be achieved, right? So it's a work. First of all,
Right.
don't come. A lot of clients come thinking that if I go to a coach, this will get done. It will not get
Right.
done. You'll have to work towards getting it done with me, and I'm going to work towards that with you.
Right.
So I
Right.
think if you're ready to commit and act, that's when you should step up and say, I want to seek help. That's
Right.
when life coaching comes into picture. If you're ready to take full accountability of your actions, so if you've not done something, you promised in a session, I'm going to work on this, you're not able to do it, come back and own it. If
Right.
you have that courage, then you're ready for something like a coaching session.
Great.
And have an open mindset and believe that anything is possible, you know.
Right.
So if you think all of these things align, then definitely coaching is something that you must seek for yourself.
Perfect. Perfect. Great way to close. Great way to close. I don't know what to say. Thank you so much. I know you've been we've been pestering you for the longest time, and you've been damn busy. You've meted out time to do this pod with us. Thank you so much. And I know I just want to have a conversation with you again soon.
Thank you so much, Yash. It was
Thank
really a pleasure talking to you today.